Today we're just going to talk about social media a little bit. Uh, and again, this is it's kind of an environment you guys are tasked with uh, learning, knowing, and understanding social media. Just to give you a little background about myself, um, again, my name is Kuande Hall. I am the manager of the social media training office here at Dinfos. I've been here about 2 years now. Uh, I came in, I'm actually a former enlisted Marine. I joined the Marine Corps in 2001, just prior to 9/11. I was actually a network administrator when I first came in, so I did data for a long time on the reserve side of the house before augmenting into public affairs. I augmented and became active duty in 2007 as an enlisted Marine. As a sergeant, went back out to Fleet Field, did some great stories, took some nice photos. A couple of years later, in 2009, I was selected to the Syracuse program, military photojournalism course. I graduated from Syracuse. I received a phone call that probably set me on the path to this. 2010, I got a call from a gunny from headquarters of the Marine Corps, and they told me, "Congratulations, you're going to be the new social media chief for the Marine Corps." It's 2010. Just prior to 2010, probably around 2007, 8, the DOD had the response to social media was to ban it. They didn't want anybody using social media. They didn't want anybody hanging around on social media. They realized and recognized the dangers of using social media. So there was a ban on social media. In 2010, we were just kind of starting back up. So all the headquarters services elements had social media, but we weren't really doing it well. When I got to headquarters Marine Corps, it was kind of a mess. We had some internal infighting between ourselves, which the Defense Media Activity, or Marines.mil, and the Recruiting Command. There were two different Facebook pages. There were a lot of trolls out there. There was a lot of, it was just kind of chaos. And we were trying to sort our way through and trying to figure out what we wanted to do in this social media realm. And so just being at headquarters Marine Corps, there wasn't a military presence that was doing social media well in 2010. There wasn't some place that when I came into the door, I could say, "Oh, let me go and look at and see what the Navy is doing, see what the Army is doing, and see if we can emulate that." And so as a result, we looked at things like we looked at Old Spice, and we looked at Lay's, and we looked at big businesses that were doing social media well, and we kind of incorporated that into some of the things that we were doing then. And so for a very short time, I was at headquarters Marine Corps. We were able to grow the Marine Corps Facebook presence from about 12,000 followers to a little over 1 million in about 7 months. And across all digital properties, we had about, maybe 3 million in engagements across that time. And people started paying attention to what the Marine Corps was doing. Okay. I left shortly after. I was replaced by Mr. Mark Faylogo, who took the social media realm and expanded it even further. In 2013, I left headquarters Marine Corps, and I got out of the Marine Corps in 2015. And I was done. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I needed a new path, so I went back to school. I got my master's degree at Georgetown University in marketing and communications. I applied to the job as an instructor, actually, here at Dinfos. I just wanted to teach photography and journalism, maybe a little writing, because that is my true passion. In 2018, I walked in the door and they said, "Hey, congratulations, you're the social media guy." And so, boom, here I am today. I've spent the last 2 years revamping this program and re-understanding how we can better train and better equip you guys to go out and do your job. Because, again, it's kind of a scary proposition, but it's going to be a challenge that you guys are going to, I hope, happily face. Over the next couple of weeks, we'll be speaking with you during classes and during courses to kind of get you on a path to better understand social media and not just use it as this kind of fun thing to put things on, but more so, how do I strategically communicate using just another channel that's available for me to communicate my commander's intent and communicate my commander's message. So as you guys go through the course and as you guys sit through all of the classes that you're sitting in at Dinfos or through the virtual world here, my hope is that every class you think about how you can utilize that class with social media, because it's kind of it's an integrated thing. And we don't want social media to be the end all be all. It's definitely not the end all be all. I don't expect all you guys to leave Demphos and then suddenly be on social media or be social media experts, because it is going to be something that continues to evolve your entire time in the services and in once you're in and as you continue on after you leave the services. It's going to be kind of one of those challenging things that kind of comes and goes. I want to start out today's class by showing you two videos, and then I'll kind of discuss it, why I showed you those two videos before we get into the heart of the class, if you will. I show you those two videos. One, because the reason why the DoD and people are so trying to get on these platforms is because of the abundance of people that are on social media. I think we can all agree in the class that just the amount of people on social media alone uh, the potential for reaching and spreading your reach and spreading your commander's intent, spreading the things that you guys are doing on a day-to-day basis is just astronomical when you incorporate social media into that. And so there is a reason why we should try to attempt to be on social media if you can do it effectively. And that first video showed that. The reason I show you the second video is because I don't want you to get stuck in the platform realm. I don't want you to think or equate, hey, it's social media, it's Facebook, or it's social media, it's Twitter, or it's social media, it's YouTube. Because again, these platforms, they come and go. They they will change all the time. But again, like Mr. McKinley mentioned, if you guys get into the right mindset and start to strategically think and plan around these platforms or around social media, then you can incorporate new things. So if the next greatest thing is, I don't know, Blue Label or something crazy like that, right? New platform comes out, you can take the time to sit down, evaluate that platform and see, is this a place that we need to be, or is it a place that we shouldn't be? And that's what social strategy and social media should be about, and a communication strategy should be about. You guys are going to learn how to communicate and how to plan appropriately, and social media is just an aspect, a further aspect of that social media and that communication planning and strategy. Okay, and so what I want to talk to you guys about today is the 6 demands or the 6 must-haves that you must have in place in order to be successful in social media. And we'll find over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to show you guys some examples of times where you'll see when you do not have one of these elements, how things can go wrong and how we can, kind of misdirect or misguide our use of these platforms and the things that we say and we do. Okay. And so for me, when we start out, I think the first thing we talk about is strategy. What you're going to learn over the next 4 weeks is how to create effectively a social media strategy. A strategy is there, so it is simply there to provide the validation for everything that you do, for all the activities that you do. You can refer back to your social media strategy and see if this is the thing that we want to continue to convey or express, or am I using the channel in a way that we said that we were going to use it? Is this a piece of content that needs to go out on my social media platform? I think when I look across the landscape of social media in the DoD, I see that a lot of times we have used social media as our own personal bulletin boards, right? So it's like everything that's happening in the unit or the organization goes on social media. Hey, somebody is getting promoted. Let's put that on social media. Hey, somebody got in trouble. Let's put that on social media. Hey, somebody is, we're having a flag football game today, or we're doing X, Y, and Z. Let's put that on social media. And I think that we have inundated the platforms with too much information, and we're not focused on the things that we truly want to say and what we want to get past because we don't have a strategy in place. And so here at the Defense Information School, we're going to break social media strategy down into 4 blocks of instruction. Okay, so you guys are going to get a class. The next time I see you will be next week. It'll be on policy and procedure. So we're going to dive into the policies and procedures that exist currently. So we're going to look at your services handbooks. We're going to look at the DoD guidance that's out there, Joint Pub 361. What those are, though, are they're just basic documents that give you kind of your left and right lateral limits. We're then going to show you and begin to craft our own policy and procedure for our specific organization. And we're going to teach you how to do that. So that's the first aspect of creating a social strategy. You've got to have rules and regulations that you're going to follow, what you're going to abide by, things of that nature, right? And then we're going to move into a block on platforms and functionality. So we're going to look at the most effective means of using like a Facebook versus Twitter, or Instagram versus YouTube, or do we need to use Reddit? Should we be on Reddit? Should we be on, any other site that's out there? We're going to look at each particular platform and see the uses or the current trends on that platform, and then see if we can effectively communicate on those platforms using it in the way that the users want to experience. And then we're going to get into analytics. So we'll look at evaluation and determining success and failure of our social strategy. Are the things that we're doing right now, are they working? Is the correct path? And then we're going to get into kind of what drives my audience with content creation and things like that. So you're going to have 4 blocks of instruction, and all of that we believe builds up into creating your social media strategy. Just to kind of give you an example of a social strategy, if we look at Headquarters Marine Corps, I use them a lot in examples because one, I was there when it first kind of got on off the ground, so I kind of know where they're going with what they're trying to do. But a strategy includes, like, this is their Twitter feed. If you look at their Twitter feed, it may not necessarily be the right way. There is no right or wrong. Well, there's definitely a wrong way. It might not necessarily be the right way, quote unquote, but they have established a way that works for them. And what I mean by that, if you look at their Twitter, it's always, and most of their platforms in general, there's always like a headline or like a tagline. Boom, this is what they have to say in 1, 2, or 3 words. Then you'll see a shorter caption below that, and then you'll see a photo or video attached. Okay, and every post is like that. There's a consistency there. That is done strategically and planned out strategically. Same thing if you go to their Facebook page. For a while, they just changed leadership over there, so they've adjusted slightly. But realistically, your strategy should evolve, but it shouldn't change that much, right? You should build a consistency that can last throughout your time. So if you're at a unit for 3 years, 2 years, and 3 years, and you leave, you can pass that strategy on to the next person, and it'll continue to go because you're building longevity for the brand and for the unit over time, not just for your time there. But they used to post only native video on their Facebook because, again, that's what they've learned and determined worked effectively for their audience and the people that are watching them, engaging them. Same thing, their Instagram, again, you'll see headline, you see caption, and then a select number of hashtags that they decided to use on Instagram, right? Same thing. And then you'll notice all across all the platforms, there's a consistency, even though they don't necessarily post the same thing from one platform to the next. There's a consistency with the naming convention. There's a consistency with the strategy and how they post and the things of those nature. And all of that needs to be established. And again, even looking at their YouTube was structured and set up in a certain way, and they only posted certain types of images and videos on those platforms. So, and that's what consistency does for you. And that's what a social strategy would do for you in the long run. And even Flickr, they're still on Flickr. But again, analyzing and understanding what that platform is and how can I most effectively use that platform in my social strategy. Hoping I'm not going too fast, guys, but like I said, moving right along. The second thing that you need to be effective is audience and understanding who your audience is. And you're going to learn over the next couple of weeks, like identifying your audience, and you'll hear things like internal audience versus external audience and things of that nature. Social media takes that, but it modifies it slightly. When we speak of audience, yes, you need to know who they are and where they spend their time, but you need to be very specific on who it is that you're speaking to when it comes to social media. One of the easiest way I usually explain that is if somebody is in the audience, if you just think about this concept, if you're married or you're in a relationship with someone, the way that you explain your significant other to like your best friend is vastly different than the way you explain it to them, to their parents, right? Unless their parents are just really, really cool and you know, depending on what stage of your relationship, but it really doesn't matter. The way that those two conversations are different. Right? Or the way that you speak to your grandma is very different than how you speak to like your closest friend or your closest cousin, right? Because it's an understanding of who your audience is and realizing that realistically that audience doesn't change that much. I mean, it does, but there are other ways to reach certain audiences. If I'm using Facebook to speak to my cousins, maybe I can use, well, not my cousins, maybe I'm using Facebook to talk to my grandparents, right? And then I'm using Twitter to talk to my cousins. I'm using Instagram to talk to, you know, the artsy folks, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? It's very specific on who it is that you're speaking to, and not necessarily age related, but more so just the mindset of individuals that are interested in the type of information that you're providing and you're giving out. Marine Corps, for example, when we started out, we identified that we knew that we wanted to speak to Marines. And we knew that Marines act a certain way, they talk a certain way, they walk a certain way, they feel a certain way about themselves. They have their own kind of messaging and you know, just we're a weird breed. I've always said that. You know, and they'll probably say the same thing. If you know a Marine, you know that they just think differently, right? Hoorah. So knowing who that audience is, then I can put out messaging that's geared strictly to them, and so that they know, for one, that I am a Marine and that I'm talking a language that they're familiar with. And it's okay if I post something on a Marine page and it doesn't necessarily resonate with somebody in the Army or in the Navy, because I'm not talking to you. And I don't have to talk to everybody on a particular platform, as long as I'm particular with who it is that I'm talking to. For instance, I like poetry, right? I write poetry, I perform spoken word poetry. If you're not interested in poetry, you don't necessarily have to follow me on social media, right? I mean, why would you if that's not your interest? But if you are interested and you know that that's what I'm going to provide you, then you're more willing to be there and be in that space and engage on the type of content, as long as I'm consistent with that thing, right? Like I like Camaros. I like Camaros. I follow a lot of pages that are Camaro based, right? I want to see modifications. I want to see, different colors. I want to see what people are doing to the engine. I want to see maybe, a couple of drag races or things like that. The minute you show me a Subaru, you've kind of lost me, because it's like, that's not what I came here for. And then the next thing you post is, you're out and about with your kids. And I'm like, all right, that's great. And then the next thing is maybe you're posting about, the meal that you're eating later. And then I'm going to leave your page, because that's not what I came here for. Social media is about the one platform that where people are going to actively seek you out. They're going to actively seek out who you are, your organization, and they're going to say, what is it that you have to say to me? And if you're not speaking along your brand and speaking about the things that you do effectively and efficiently in your organization, you're probably going to lose people, because they're not going to understand what it is that you're trying to say. And so you need to be specific with who your audience is and try to gear your messaging and your strategy around that particular audience. The third thing you need is commitment. And I think this is one thing that we tend to fall down on a little bit ourselves. Social media is a two-way means of communication, right? There's an expectation that when you put something out, somebody is going to respond, and then a conversation is going to take place. But you will be amazed if you guys are following platforms right now, or if you're on your unit's platform, just notice how many times the page or the organization, the unit, says something, and then in the comments, they say nothing else. There's no communication. So no matter what people are saying, they don't say, hey, thank you for following. There's no recognition whatsoever. We're just pushing information out. Social media is not a soapbox. It's not about, hey, you know what? I got to say this. I'm going to say it. Boom, we're done, right? You've got to be aware that the whole purpose of communication, the whole purpose of social media is to generate conversation about whatever it is that you guys want to talk about. It's a great opportunity for you guys to talk about the things that you have to say and the things that you're doing and doing well in your organization. And when you do not commit, bad things happen. Here's an example. Last year, headquarters of Army, they posted a young soldier. He was talking about his experiences in the Army and the things that he accomplished. And so the administrator posted, they thought it was a great idea and said, hey, what has the Army done for you, right? And hoping that they would get these positive feedback and these positive interactions, what happened was the narrative went bad. The people started talking about homeless veterans. They started talking about PTSD. They started talking about suicide rates. They started talking about, just everything but the good that the Army had done. And it took, if you look at this post, it took the Army 2 days to respond and say, hey, you know what? We understand you guys X, Y, and Z. Now, of course, hindsight is 20/20. But just imagine if that first post that came up, they said, hey, what's the Army done for you? And somebody said, hey, you know what? My father was homeless and, he had PTSD and, he took his own life. And the administrator, instead of not saying anything, said, hey, brother, we understand and we got you. Here's some resources for you that are still available. And we could have brought in other organizations that were out there to help these young people. Perhaps that would have changed the entire narrative. It could have changed the entire conversation. It could have been, somebody could have saw that and said, yes, you know what? The VA helped me do X, Y, and Z, or this, you could have helped that narrative a little bit. But to go 2 days, that is the equivalent of me coming into you guys' classroom and asking you how you're doing. And somebody says, hey, my knee hurts. And instead of me saying anything, you hear nothing. Just dead silence. Or I walk out. So I ask you how you're doing, and then you say, hey, this is my problem, and I walk out on you. And then I come back in 2 days. Because what happens is I walk out, the person there is going to say, wow, that was kind of messed up that he even asked me that. The person next to them is going to say, yeah, that was kind of messed up. Who does this guy think he is? There's going to be an entire conversation that happens in that room. And when I come back in 2 days, I'm going to have zero respect. Okay? Somebody mentioned the Chief Warrant Officer Yarborough down in Paris Island. This was a conversation that happened a couple of weeks ago. They posted something about Pride Month. Okay? And people started to come on with their comments. Now, again, I think strategically, the warrant officer did a great job of responding and taking ownership for the things that he was doing. He didn't want the narrative to go someplace that it shouldn't go. And some people might look at that and go, hey, you know what? Maybe he was a bit too abrasive, or maybe he was, but you got to think, first of all, it's the Marine Corps, right? So he had a voice established and a personality and a tone and a demeanor established. Second, you would hope, I don't know because I haven't talked to the chief warrant officer down there, but you would hope that there was some type of discussion about, hey, when we post, we're going to allow, these type of responses. I think the chief warrant officer, every response had a command message. Everything was supported by, fact-based, and he didn't want the narrative to go away. But again, I had a class not too long ago where there was an Army captain, and he didn't necessarily appreciate, the way that the chief warrant officer, he said he thought he was a little bit disrespectful at times. I think the important message here is that they realized and recognized that there was a two-way means of communication. They realized and recognized that there are some hot topics in the world, especially today, that if you post on your page, people are going to have an opinion about. And you should be able to support your original post or your original messaging with messages that are embedded within your organization and within your unit, and be able to utilize that on social platforms. What we can't do is not say anything, because the narrative will be taken away from you, and people realize and recognize who you are and the voice that you have, the presence that you have, and you got to commit that, hey, if I'm going to be on social media, it's going to require me to give, my attention. Be that, you need to establish that. What is going to be my battle rhythm? If I post something today, am I going to be looking at the comments tomorrow? Am I going to be looking at it next week? I think you should plan based on what the content is that you're posting. Absolutely. We all know in the military, if you post something about, at least hot topics in the Marine Corps, if you post anything about, females, or if you post anything about, Pride Month, things like that, they're going to generate discussion. They're going to. And you need to be prepared to respond to those discussions, utilizing, again, your commander's intent and all those things that you guys are going to be learning over the next few weeks about communication. You've got to have a plan in place to communicate. Because that's what social media is about at the end of the day. It's funny, I was talking again to the captain, and he was saying, I think this was the wrong way. I think, he shouldn't have responded this way. I think he was disrespectful. My question to him was, do you follow Paris Island's Facebook page? His answer was no. I said, what do you think drove that conversation to your page? How did that page get your attention? The answer to that we're going to get into. It's all about algorithms. It's all about how the computer system works. If you're generating conversation and engagement, you're going to reach more people. And if you fail to do that, if you do not participate, then you're losing the opportunity to first and foremost, get your message across, And secondly, to be able to engage and control the narratives that you guys actually go out there and start. So it does require commitment. And speaking of commitment, step four is resources. You got to know and understand we have not done a good job of supplying you guys, or your office hasn't done a good job. I've been a one man shop. Some of you guys are going to go to a one, two, three man shop, and social media is one of those things that requires resources. You've got to see and know and understand. Do you have the people in your office that are going to be able to manage this, to provide content for it? I talk to a lot of social managers that are on, oh, well, we're on 5 platforms. And I'm like, okay, you're on 5 platforms. Let me just go check out one. And I'll go and look at their Twitter, and they never use it. But they're there, but they never use it. So you're not there. It's kind of like, why create something for yourself, that you can't maintain, that you just have this shell account? You got to know that do I have the time? Do I have the resources in my office? Do I have the people, the understanding to be able to support the use of this particular platform over time? What can I and what can I not do? And you've got to put time and into those resources. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you to go to your commander and go, oh, well, I need 10 more bodies in my shop so we can run a Facebook page, because that's probably not going to work. It's just not. That's the world that you're going in. You guys are going to find yourselves in, again, 1, 2, 3 man fighting holes. But you need to be able to strategically manage and plan out for the resources that are going to be required to kind of feed these beasts and kind of keep this thing going. Because again, when we get into functionality and platforms, you're going to know and understand and see that without being able to generate conversation, without putting that time in place, then you're talking to yourself. You're literally just putting information out into a space where there are billions and billions of pieces of information. You are fighting in a digital war battle space, and you're trying to get people to hear your message. You're standing on the highway and people are driving 70 miles per hour past you, and you're trying to get them to stop. And if you're not engaging, if you're not flagging them down, if you're not giving them a reason to stop, they're not going to. They're going to continue to keep going past you. So you've got to have the resources in place, and you need to be able to evaluate that and see, do I have everything in place that I need to have in place? 5 is an identity. And I talked a little bit about it with the chief warrant officer, but people require you to be authentic and genuine, especially in today's world. There are tons and tons of you guys are entering into a world where there are bots and fake information and fake accounts, and all of that stuff is just pushing out different narratives, right? And you'd be amazed how many people that I actually, especially in today's environment, go online and just watch some of the arguments that you guys have probably seen, right? And just take the time to click on somebody's profile. And sometimes these people aren't even real. People are literally having conversations and arguments with fake people, fake accounts, with bots that are just there to generate that and strike that one tension point that's just going to set you off, right? But you've got to be authentic, which is why it's important to create a voice and a tone and a style to your content, right? Do you want to be funny? Do you want to be, serious all the time? Do you want to put a little Marine swagger in it? I talked to a drill instructor at school one time, and he was saying, oh, we've had to change the way that we're posting on social media because, we want younger people to be drill instructors, et cetera, et cetera. And I kind of sat there for a while, and I said, why would you do such a thing? Because there's an identity of being a drill instructor. Something about the Marine Corps drill instructor is just, there's an aura about them. You could take that identity and incorporate it to your posts. So that imagine getting a digital knife hand, or, get your eyeballs off me in the comments. In your comments is where you can kind of create that identity, where you can kind of be funny, or if you choose, if that's how you want people to see you. But think about it. You're creating a narrative about yourself over time across all platforms. And so building an identity that's genuine and authentic will let people know that people will be more hesitant to just respond and say whatever, or if you've got a commander that's on the page and he posts something and somebody says something and the commander actually responds back in his tone and his voice and his identity, people are less likely to spam things like that, right? You've got to kind of build an identity for your organization, for your unit. Every one of you guys are going to a unit organization that is the very best in the world at what it is that you guys do, right? That is your opportunity to build a little bit of authenticity about your organization. What is it that you can only get there? What is it that you can only get at Denfos, right? Why can't I have a presence of someone who is an instructor, who's always looking to teach and improve and build upon? That would be the identity that I would choose to use if I was running, let's say, the Denfos page, which I don't, but if it was, like, that's the type of thing. If you're at an infantry unit, there are things that are specific to infantry battalion, training battalions, that you could very easily incorporate into your unit's persona, if you will. Something that people that were there or have been there can relate to. And that's an important aspect of the social strategy. Good example is, again, 2nd Marine Division. They did this a few years ago. They posted, it was last year actually, when the hurricane was coming. And they said, they posted on the page, hey, what questions do you have? We're working hard on continuing to keep you guys updated. And then I would assume that these Marines knew and understood the audience that they had and how Marines would act to something so crazy. If you're asking me about what about a hurricane? So Marines did what Marines do. They kind of came back and they were like, well, what if I go out and scream at the hurricane, don't do this or don't do that? And what the unit was able to do was incorporate a command message into every response and actively respond to no matter how ridiculous some of the questions were. They responded to every single one. And they went in there and they put a command message on it. So this guy was like, am I authorized to use deadly force on a hurricane? The unit's like, hey, even though hurricanes have eyes, we don't think, deadly force would work. Be safe, be careful. That is deciding, and again, committing to something and then using a little bit of authenticity to respond to the questions, responding to Marines in a way that Marines expect people to respond to. And that was really good. That was probably one of their better posts. Exactly. Wendy's does the same thing, right? There's a lot of, Starbucks. If you go to Starbucks, you get this nice, warm, hugging, please come drink, have a coffee with me. If you get Wendy's is savage, right? And they've defined that about themselves. So when you go there, that's the type of responses you're going to get. That's all planned out. That's all a part of branding and who they want to be and who they want to establish themselves to be. And you guys have got to be able to do that. And then lastly, you need a little fortitude, because at the end of the day, it is social media, right? It's social media. You're going to make mistakes. Things are going to happen. There are going to be posts that you guys are going to, in the office, you're going to say, hey, this is a great idea. We should go out. We should do this, right? And you're going to post it. And the internet is going to tear you alive. They just are. It's what they do. Some people have nothing but time on their hands. So realize that you will fail, right? No matter how perfect you think you are, no matter how hard you try not to fail, you will make mistakes. But the key is to take those mistakes and use them to improve your social strategy, so that it's a cyclical thing. Hey, let's do some trial and error. Let's go out. Let's try this. See what happens. If it's bad, don't do that again. If it's good, how can I improve upon or continue to build that into my social media strategy, right? And so you got to have a little forward. You got to have, you guys are coming into a world where you leave Denfos, you're the subject matter expert. You just got here. Great. Teach us how to use this social media thing. And you're going to have a suggestion and go, sir, ma'am, we should do this. And they're going to say, you don't know what you're talking about, right? You've got to be able to take that and understand that thing that's going to happen to you, but still stay the course. Be consistent with your training. Be consistent with your advice and counsel to your leadership, and show them that you actually understand this thing and be able to put things in place. Don't use the number, well, actually do use the numbers to validate your responses and your concerns. Don't get necessarily caught up in the likes, but use the right numbers and the right engagement. And all of those things we're going to go over in the next few weeks so that you can make a successful or a better argument about using or not using a platform versus just going in and going, hey, you know what, we got 5 likes today. Let's see if we can get 6 tomorrow. Right? It's a little it's a little different. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to say, well, whenever we do a post like this and we engage by, using a little bit of authenticity and building, rapport with our audience, then this type of reach is possible. And so my advice is that we do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of this. That is a stronger argument to have. But again, I just kind of wanted to give you, before I open it up to Q&A, because I definitely want to give you guys some time to ask questions and just have a general conversation about social media for the next, 45 minutes. But, these are the things these are the must-haves. You've got to start somewhere, and these are them. You've got to create and implement a strategy. You've got to be able to identify clearly who your audience is. Be committed to those platforms and the things that you do. Make sure that you're taking part of those two-way communications or two-way conversations. Make sure you got the resources in place, so that if I'm starting a YouTube channel, I should have a videographer on staff. If I want to be in a site like Pinterest, I realize and recognize that it requires beautiful capture of imagery. Do I have that expertise in my audience? Have I established an identity for myself? Do I know who I am or who I want to be and how I want to represent myself online? And know and understand, again, have that fortitude to know and understand that you're going to make those mistakes. And it's okay. It's okay to make those mistakes, but realize and recognize that that is the social media environment that we are in and that we are a part of.